back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and today we need to talk. And today what we need to talk about is forgiveness. And I want to talk about forgiveness because it's been something that's been debated, talked about, rehashed over and over again. But I want to talk about it in terms of how we see forgiveness and how we sometimes have a faulty assessment of what forgiveness is. And I think when some people hear forgiveness or have someone say they need to forgive, what they hear or the image that appears in their head is just them bowing at the feet of the person that has somehow hurt them or caused some form of damage, and saying to this person, you are now free to do what you've done to me to someone else. You are now free from blame, responsibility, or taking any accountability for your actions. I think that is what most people see or hear or think when they hear about forgiveness, or someone says they need to forgive, or someone makes the assumption or the indication that forgiveness is necessary in order to heal. And although that's what it may sound like, that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is literally defined as to cease the feelings of resentment towards another person for hurt, harm, or anything that they've caused. That's the literal dictionary version of forgiveness. Now, the APA expands on that definition of forgiveness by talking about it's not just a release of anger or resentment, it's a purposeful change or transformational change in behaviors and thoughts and emotions as it relates to a situation or a person. And the part of the APA definition that I can't really get down with is it almost makes it sound like in order for you to forgive, you have to somehow have a newfound compassion or generosity towards the person that have hurt you or harmed you in some way. I don't necessarily believe that that's necessary to forgive someone. I don't think you have to be now compassionate or generous towards them. Do I think that may be a byproduct of forgiveness? Yeah, that may happen. As you forgive someone, you may start to feel some level of compassion or have the ability to show some level of generosity towards someone. But I don't think that's necessary to say that you've forgiven someone. Forgiving them doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with them, doesn't mean you have to continue to talk to them, doesn't mean that they have to have a place in your life. It simply means that you release by processing, by learning how to handle or manage or allow yourself to feel the emotions that you're feeling as it relates to being hurt or harmed by someone. That's forgiveness. You release or you let go of that anger and that resentment towards that person or that situation. And you start to handle your emotions and your behavior in a different way. Those emotions and those behaviors are not now centered around that resentment or that anger. And I know that people get really upset when someone says forgiveness is for you. And here's what, for me, forgiveness is for you means. This is also what I think most people believe when they're saying that forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is for you because if you choose to forgive or if you don't choose to forgive, the only person that's ever affected by that is you. The only person that's hanging on to that anger and that resentment is you. So you are the only one that's either going to benefit or suffer from holding on to that resentment and anger. So that's one reason that's why forgiveness is for you. But also, you forgiving or not is not something that has to be told or recognized by the other person. Sometimes we feel like if I forgive this person or if I forgive this situation, this now absolves this person of everything they've done. This is not something you actually have to have a conversation about with the person who's hurt you. This is something that you do for you. Now, some people choose to absolve someone by forgiving them. That's their choice. Why people do that is their own personal, it might be a part of their forgiveness process, but absolution of another person for their behaviors and how they've treated you is not necessary in order for you to have forgiveness or to be able to have forgiven a situation. And we somehow think that if I hold on to this forgiveness, if I don't forgive this person, if I don't absolve them of their responsibility, then this somehow continues to affect them in some way. That's another reason that forgiveness is for you, is because whether you forgive or you don't, it has absolutely no effect on that other person, especially if you don't tell them that you forgive them in some way. Whatever you're going through internally to yourself affects that person in no way. They may not even care whether you forgive them or not. They may not even want your forgiveness. They may not even be asking for your forgiveness. They may be going on to the next person and doing those same hurtful, harmful things to the next person. And that, I know, is hard to hear. It is hard to hear because although we like to feel like we are saint-like, we like to feel like I am above it all. We say things such as like, I'll let karma handle it, or I'll let God handle it, or vengeance is mine, so saith the Lord. I believe that's the saying. We say all these things. But at the end of the day, I believe most of us are like Tyler Perry's Medea, in that sometimes we feel like God is just moving too slow. I need them to get God right now. And some of us feel that way. Like, we need to see the vengeance. We need to see that they are being held responsible for their actions. We need to see that in order for us to feel better. And that may never happen. And you do have free will as a human being. You have the choice to engage or to implement that vengeance for yourself. But please remember, the same way we choose that vengeance out of free will, we choose those consequences out of free will. So I know it's hard to hear, but in most cases, unless you're trying to tell this person that you forgive them, you absolve them of any responsibility or blame or guilt around the things they've done, then forgiveness is primarily for you, because whether you forgive or not, whether you hold on to that anger and resentment or not, has absolutely no effect on the person that offended you. And I know that is a hard pill to swallow. And the reason why this subject came up for me was because I was recently watching a video on social media, and I think it was another psychologist that had said she's pretty much okay with not forgiving. That's her truth. She feels like she's able to move on and not forgive. And then someone said in the comments that I don't think it's necessary for you to forgive in order to heal. I disagree with that. Also, this commenter made the statement that I hold no resentment or ill will to the person who've hurt me. And in that moment, I was like, well, you are literally defining forgiveness. So it was through forgiveness that you heal, but you just didn't identify it as forgiveness, because for you, I imagine that forgiveness meant you telling them that you've forgiven them. But in that moment, when you said you hold no ill will or resentment towards that person, then that is forgiveness. That forgiveness itself is something that helps heal you. And I wholeheartedly believe that forgiveness is necessary in order for you to heal. Forgiveness is necessary in order for you to move forward and not take that anger and resentment into your next relationship or the next situation. It's necessary in order for you to not have fears when you walk into the next relationship and then walk into the next situation. And at the same time, we sometimes get stuck on focusing on forgiving the other person. Yes, that may be necessary. Yes, that may be helpful. But sometimes we also have to forgive the situation, and we also have to forgive ourselves. And what it looks like to forgive that person is sometimes we have to forgive the other person for being a broken person that's taking their anger from another situation out on us. We have to forgive that person for not being able to see our value and to treat us better than they did. We have to forgive that person for being so angry or scarred by life that they chose to take that anger and that scar out on an innocent person or a person that had not done anything to them. You have the option of letting them know that you forgive them. It does not require that you allow this person back in your life. It does not require that you continue to have a relationship with this person. It doesn't require that you actually ever see this person again. You can forgive them and not actually ever have another conversation with that person in your life. It is helpful for us to forgive them in those situations, but sometimes it's not about that person. Sometimes you also have to forgive the situation, and forgiving the situation means understanding that that situation probably would have broken the strongest person you've known, emotionally, mentally, or physically. It could have broken anyone in that situation. Also, in forgiving the situation, in that was an unavoidable situation, and knowing that that's a situation that no matter what happened probably couldn't have been avoided. And lastly, sometimes that we don't actually think about is sometimes we need to forgive ourselves in order to heal. And forgiveness of self may look like I forgive me for continuing to be in a relationship with somebody I call a narcissist. And not air quote narcissist, because we seem to think everyone who is a horrible person is a narcissist, and it's not the case. But you have to forgive yourself for staying in a relationship with a cheater, with someone who's emotionally abusive, with someone who took you for granted. Forgive yourself for continuing to go back to that relationship. Forgive yourself for believing when they lied to you and said they wouldn't do it again. Sometimes you have to forgive yourself for feeling like you should have been stronger than that situation, or taking on someone else's responsibility that was outside of your control. Sometimes you have to forgive yourself for feeling like you could have done something different, because hindsight is 20/20, and when we're out of a situation, we can think of all of the ways that we could have made that situation less hurtful for us. We can think of all the ways that we could have avoided that situation, and we have to forgive ourselves for feeling like there is anything that we can change about something that's already happened. So when you start to think about forgiveness, ask yourself, am I getting stuck stuck in this idea that if I forgive this person, this situation, or even myself, that I somehow open a door to this person to come back in my life and cause this level of damage again. Or does me forgiving them means that they are free of blame or for the harm or the hurt that they've caused? Or do I understand that forgiveness is me processing, releasing, handling, or managing the emotions from that situation, and understanding that yes, it's a part of my past. Yes, those memories will still come up. And no, I will not have that same emotional response to those memories again. I will not have that same emotional response to maybe seeing this person again. This will not have the same level of effect on my daily life as it currently does. Is that what forgiveness means to me? All of these definitions, or the definitions that I've found for forgiveness, basically states that you are actively processing your emotions and you're ceasing to have or feel that anger or resentment towards an offender or someone who's hurt you or a situation. And that's the basic definition. But we all have some internalized feelings about what that means or what forgiveness means to us. And if we see it as anything more than allowing ourselves to process the emotions attached to a situation and attached to a person, then we may get stuck in the idea of, if I forgive, they are now free. And we also have to let go of that idea of, if I hold on to this anger and resentment, it's kind of like that saying, I'm sure everyone has heard before, is that idea of, it's me drinking poison and hoping that someone else dies. So you're holding on to that anger and resentment, hoping that it's somehow affecting the other person. And sometimes it just doesn't. And again, I know that is a hard pill to swallow, because we want people to feel a sense of responsibility or guilt when they hurt someone else. And unfortunately, some individuals just don't. That's just how they operate. And is it a healthy way to be? Not at all. But again, we have absolutely no control over another person. We can only control what we do for ourselves. And holding on to anger and resentment and all of those negative emotions about a person or experience is the poison that you're drinking. And you also have to ask yourself, am I holding on to these emotions because I fear that if I let these emotions go, if I process these emotions so I no longer feel them again, am I now opening up myself to someone else hurting me in the same way? Am I opening up the door for me to experience this type of pain again? And we may hold on to those emotions, that lack of forgiveness, so we don't open the door again. Because if I'm angry, I keep everyone out. If I'm resentful, anything that even remotely feels or looks like that situation stays away from me. Then there is something else that you need to learn from that situation that would allow you to start to see those things in another person or in another situation that has the potential to cause the same level of damage that that previous person or situation did. And you don't have to hold on to those negative emotions in order to do that. So forgiveness is something you need so you don't hold on to the anger and the resentment and all of those negative feelings that keep you stuck in that place. So when you're starting to think about whether I need to forgive myself, a person, or a situation, or when you're having this debate on whether I should forgive, start to ask yourself, for you, what does it mean for you to forgive this person, this situation, or anything else? This is something that we needed to talk about, because this debate about forgiveness, whether it's necessary, whether it's not, who do I forgive, why do I need to forgive, can I heal without forgiving, has gone round and round a circle. But at the end of the day, forgiveness is literally to cease to hold on to anger and resentment towards an offender. That could be a person or a situation. That's it. Doesn't mean you've absolved someone of hurting you. It doesn't mean you excuse what has happened to you. It doesn't mean that you allow this person or someone that has the same characteristics of that person to be a part of your life in any way. But I will go back to my original point. I believe that forgiveness is necessary in order to heal. Now, I hope this conversation was helpful today. I hope you take something from this conversation that will be useful moving forward. This has been another installment of We Need to Talk. As always, if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments, jot them down below. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.